Stand up.
Hello and happy Saturday, everybody. I've got a great conversation with Christian Finnegan joining me. Christian and I will be together along with Jay Alcovan and more this coming Thursday. We'll be together at QED in Queens, New York, hosting a watch party for the final night of the DNC. So if you're in or around New York and you want tickets, there's a link in today's show notes and every day between now and then. Otherwise, you can join us via Zoom, and I'm looking forward to that. Christian and I always have great conversations. Today was entirely about the week in politics and his thoughts around all the big important issues that we discuss here this week. You can support Christian on Substack with a paid subscription to his amazing newsletter all about music and new music for olds like us. newmusicforolds.substack.com. Go check that out now. Watch his comedy specials. Follow him on social media. Support him every way you can because I always love when he joins me. Let's do it right now with Christian Finnegan. And it's Saturday. Christian Finnegan joins me to talk about things from the week or not or anything else. We just love to talk with you, and we'll be together this Thursday night to watch the DNC live watch party at QED. And I'm really excited to see you in person.
Yeah, it'll be us and a few other comics, J.L. Calvin and Nagin Farsad and Crystal Adams and possibly another couple of guests. And we'll be making chit chat and having a good time, giving out a couple goofy prizes. And So 7 o'clock to whenever Kamala finishes her speech, QEDastoria.com. Check that out.
Yeah, should be fun. It's going to be a very exciting week this week, the DNC. They've not been able to lay a real glove on the ticket of Harris and Walz, it would seem, unless I'm missing something.
You know, it's one of these things where we're all in our bubbles. I mean, the idea of accusing anybody being in a bubble now is hilarious because we're all in our bubbles because we all see the curated feeds that we've all designed our own technological prisons that we live inside. But, you know, I don't know if you saw like earlier this week, they're like Hugh Hewitt and like Eric Erickson. I just realized they both have first and last names.
Oh, interesting. I'm just hearing that now too. Anyway.
Yeah. Hugh Hewitt and Eric Erickson were like, oh, they're going to have to dump Tim Walz. Like we've completely destroyed him as a nominee. And I'm like, are you insane? Like, what are you talking about? Like none of your attempts at taking him down have left your own dumb little sphere of influence. And maybe it's wish casting. Maybe it's just this idea. If we say it often enough, it'll become a meme and it'll then become true. But to my mind, none of it is taking any steam out of them whatsoever. I mean, granted, it's still 3 months away, but I feel pretty good.
Did you see the attacks on Tim Walz for his conversation with Kamala Harris that the campaign put out about food?
Oh, God, these babies, these fucking babies that he, demeaning himself as a white man, referring to white guy tacos. Like, first of all, white guy tacos is a term, apparently, in the Midwest. Like, it's like an actual thing that people say. But also, it's like, can't we just, come on, people from the Midwest, white people from the Midwest, it's kind of a shtick that you have bad food and that you don't like seasoning. Like, that's kind of a tried and true shtick at this point. But these people are just they don't know how to react to anything without either cruelty or outrage. Like those are the only two settings they know.
That's a great way of looking at it. I'm just looking at some of the things that were said. My old friend Will Cain apparently said on Fox News, why is Kamala the expert on tacos? Did she say white guy tacos are tuna and mayonnaise? Conservative provocateur Mike Cernovich took it further, accusing Walz of lying about skipping seasoning. Tim Walz is such a compulsive liar and deployment dodger that I decided to see if he lied about not seasoning his food as well. Ted Cruz got in on it and said Hispanics are not tacos. Unclear what he meant, however.
I don't know what that could possibly mean. But yeah, I love that like Mike Cernovich, like, oh man, you really blew this case wide open, because he won a food contest. He neglecting to mention that he won this food contest in Minnesota, where ostensibly they don't know how to make good food either. The people he's going against. It's like, I don't know, no offense, Minnesota, but winning a recipe contest in Minnesota is, I don't know, winning a I can't think of a good simile.
He ran out of steam with his metaphor.
I did run out of steam because it was like anything I was going to come up with was either like dumb or offensive. It's like, that's like winning a water skiing competition in the Gobi Desert.
I like that. That would have been fine for me. My bar is low here. Well, see, I think that the campaign and the way that they're managing it is really interesting given the short amount of time left. They are apparently taking a strategy of not really talking to reporters, not taking questions from reporters very much, putting out their own media everywhere, their responses and reactions rapid to anything Trump and Vance do. And this sit-down video with Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, you see their differences as well as their similarities in love of, say, music and so on. And I think it is so well managed that it's why they're doing so well. What do you think of what's happening and the fact that they're not talking to media and the way that they're handling this campaign?
Well, it's a couple things. One, I think it's way overblown and overstated. This campaign is, 4 weeks old for Kamala Harris and 2.5 weeks old for Tim Walz. There's things to do. Like there are, people like, oh, she hasn't released any policy yet. It's like, you don't just snap your fingers and have, a 900-page policy document. Like these things take time to vet and to write and to rewrite and to make sure you go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure there's no nonsense that these same media who are the same legacy media who are complaining about them not giving press conferences that that they would pick apart if, God forbid, they did not seriously vet their own policies. And so it's like, I always knew this stuff was coming. I mean, this morning, she released a bunch of her policy stuff, which is, again, it really is an issue for the Politico writers and the semaphore people. And, it's not really something that Joe Q or Jane Q voter gives a shit about. This is the sitting vice president of the United States of America, and they're running against Donald Trump. I think we have a pretty good idea of where her policies differ from his. Like, I think we have a general idea of how a Harris presidency and a Trump presidency might differ. I don't feel like I need a bullet pointed, rigorous breakdown of policy to understand that what Harris is offering as opposed to Trump.
Yes, it's a lot of what we already saw from President Biden, but also yesterday she came out and talked about inflation, and she unveiled some economic ideas, including trying to get prices under control with some kind of price fixing through the government. And it's already being criticized by smart progressive people like Catherine Rampell at the Washington Post and others, saying you can't really do this. But she's trying to offer something new, and it would seem that outside of women's reproductive rights, which she's talked about plenty, another issue that we all have is the price of food. Christian, what do you think of her utopian promise to the American people that she's going to get food prices under control through government policy, government price fixing?
First of all, I have not read, in depth, so I can't claim to understand this stuff backwards and forwards, but it feels like people are really jumping on the term price fixing when that's really not what's being talked about. It's about some sort of cap or some sort of guidance as to under what context entire industries can just jack up prices with any related sort of cultural or, global news event that would call for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think everybody understood during the pandemic that prices were going to go up and why they were going up and why there were supply chain issues and all those things. And I'm not an economist, but it makes perfect sense to me that companies raise their prices in a situation like a pandemic or, an oil shortage or some big global event. And then when that event goes away, it's not as if these companies say, oh, great, now we can lower our prices. That's just the new price. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like Harris and Walz and what I think a lot of voters looked at again. Why does bad news mean higher prices, but good news still results in those same higher prices? Can't the stuff be tied to anything?
Right. It's like you said, the whole plan is a lot more in depth than that, builds on a lot of the proposals President Biden already announced. up to $25,000 in down payment support for first-time home buyers, to provide a $10,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers, things to make everything, including the housing market, more affordable, because it's so hard to have government management of these markets. And any mention of it, of course, Christian, sets the hair on fire. You know, we have to sit here now and listen to people constantly uses the word communist and socialist to describe the policies of the Democratic Party. They've been doing it forever, and yet it doesn't matter that we never actually have these policies come.
And, you know, as far as I know, this is stuff that was done in the 1950s, that there were bonds that were issued for first-time home buyers, you know, things like through the GI Bill. And that's the way Long Island became Long Island, is because they were offering all of these bonds and government assistance in buying homes out there to white people, at least. And these are things that I think used to be a part of our culture that sort of went the way of the dodo once Reagan came around. And now people act like it's this preposterous thing to suggest. I don't know enough about the home buying market. My wife and I own this little cabin upstate, which we bought in cash because I am afraid of finance. So I'm certainly not going to lecture anybody on what's good macroeconomic policy. But I know that what she's proposing is not some new thing that nobody's ever tried before. It seems like in the 1950s, that's sort of when things were going well. I don't know. Maybe return some of those policies.
Hey, I wonder what you think of this. I feel like the real blatant overt racism and sexism is not working. I feel like it's not working. And I feel like Tim Walz is part of why, partially why it's not working, because he's given her so much respect and created this kind of theme of joy and happiness and so on. But even without Tim Walz, it feels like, and I'm surprised, but that those attacks aren't working, especially, I almost want to say obviously with most black folks, but especially with most women, the kind of things that are being said and the way that he talks about Kamala Harris, it's not working. And that, by the way, is according to a whole bunch of right-wing firebrands who are going on TV and trying to tell him through the TV, it's not working. What are your thoughts?
When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And when you're a Trump, everything looks like an excuse to be racist, or sexist or whatever. I don't know that he can do any other thing.
Right.
I think that
he can't,
especially when you are determined to improv all the time, when you're the person who feels the need to speak extemporaneously constantly, no matter how many times your advisors try to keep you on topic, you're going to go to the sort of the lizard brain hobby horses that you always have. I mean, you're going to go to the greatest hits because that's just where your brain goes. And that's where his, Adderall riddled 78-year-old brain goes, is just everything is just, some sort of racial wedge issue. It's like all he knows is sort of 80s racism, like welfare moms, like that's the frame he thinks of. That's why that black jobs thing is, because he still thinks of that as just like, hey, who's gonna clean our trash? These black people aren't gonna get these great garbage men jobs anymore. I mean, that's where his brain goes. As far as it working or not working, I think it really works on a certain group of people. The problem is those people are already voting for him. Those people are already on his side. There is a swath of people who might be predisposed to vote for Trump, but just don't have those hangups, or at least not to the same degree. Right. They work with people of different races. They might have. This is something I have always thought, is that millennials to a certain degree, but Gen Z specifically, are the first generation of voters who are going to have grown up with non-white authority figures.
Yep.
On a regular basis. Yep. They've had black bosses. They've had Latino teachers. They've had police officers who are Sikh. They're used to seeing non-white people in positions of authority. And so the idea of it does not seem anathema to them. They don't have this sort of gut level revulsion at the idea of a non-white person telling them what to do.
Right.
Like my dad's generation, it's like, not to point out my dad, but just people of his generation, they knew black people as two things: either the sort of kindly janitor who was always so nice at work and, or they know Chuck D screaming, or they know Stokely Carmichael, Black Power, or, robbing them or killing them, or like, that's the only way they know black people. That's why I think Obama drove so many people nuts, is because they'd never been condescended to by a black guy before.
Yeah. Why is he? So many people felt like he was talking down to them.
Yeah. Because they just were not used to it. They're not used to somebody who looks like him. It's I think I just started to accept the idea that we might be equal, and now you're going to act like you're better than me, like that. No.
No, I think you make a good point, especially about the Gen Z. My daughters are 17 and 19, and they don't really remember the Bush years, but they remember the Obama years, and they remember their father promising them that they'd wake up and a woman would be president in 2016. They remember that. So I'm really hoping that my daughters get to see a woman become president in November. And I think that the data and polling that I've heard about women right now is fascinating. We knew this was going to be a huge issue because when you take away an entire gender's reproductive rights, it animates even people who pay zero attention to politics and men who don't want their girlfriends to have unwanted babies. So the issue is always there, but now having Kamala on the ticket, it's just so poignant. And the polling, the data is that there are like no undecided women, which doesn't mean there aren't a scarily, frighteningly large percentage of women, especially white women, still voting for Trump and saying those clips go viral. I don't think we're ready for a female president. Women saying that, but most women are voting, it would seem, for Kamala Harris because likely this issue is for front of the mind, and it's a lady.
Yeah, and I think that the potency of Roe as an issue, or Dobbs, or however you want to frame it, is not just the nuts and bolts of will I have access to reproductive care, which of course doesn't affect all women. It affects women of a certain age and all that. But the idea of it is so repulsive to a lot of women. Just the idea that you would try to reassert this dominance over women in the public sphere, because it's not just about babies. It's not just about abortion. It's about trying to downgrade women's participation in the public sphere. It's trying to get back to the days where a woman having a job was like kind of a quirky, wacky thing. I mean, and I think I do think that there is a section of the pro-life movement who have a genuine religious conviction that it's murder and blah, blah, blah. I think it's a shockingly small portion of the pro-life movement. This?
I recently started thinking this when I hear people say what you're about to say. And I would only add that, but those same people, and I hate this kind of argument, but those same people also generally believe, overwhelmingly, including the women, that men should be in charge. Like if they believe that birth starts at conception and they really believe all that, they probably also believe a lot of patriarchy. No?
Yeah, I would be interested to find out how many like women CEOs or, women in positions of authority are also pro-life. I can't imagine it's that many.
If you pay close attention to the Christian nationalist movement, there's so many of them that don't think women should vote. The man of the house should vote. Like that's a popular thing in that world.
I think a lot of the advances, and I've definitely always thought this was true with gay marriage, and I think a lot of the progress that was made in the last part of the 20th century and first 15 years of the 21st century, it was kind of, I don't think the foundation had fully set on a lot of these accomplishments, that the cement was still wet. And I think a lot of people on the Democratic side kind of assumed that once there was a woman on a presidential ticket and once, gay marriage was passed, that these arguments were going to be settled. And I think that I feel like we didn't fully appreciate the degree to which the fight was still happening just because we thought we had quote unquote won. And I'm hoping that this is like, how like the French Revolution took twice to really stick.
No, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the French Revolution happened, and then Napoleon came and basically swept everything back. I mean, this is what Les Mis takes place in Interregnum. The French Revolution basically had to happen twice for it to really stick. And I kind of feel like with a lot of these rights, with abortion rights and voting rights and, racial progress and things like that, we're living through the backlash. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to quote Van Jones, who has not covered himself in a ton of glory in the past few years. But I think the night that Trump won, he called it a white lash, which is, I think, true, that there was sort of a backlash. There's sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yep. I'm hoping that this will be the end of that 1 step back, and that, I think that's what was so depressing too about the way the election was going before President Biden dropped out, is this idea of like, oh, this might not just be a step back. This might be like a Iranian style complete redesigning of social mores. Like, this could get ugly.
Yeah. Have you been paying attention to Trump at all this past week? A lot of people are saying he's really losing it. He's got no energy. He feels defeated. He's not on message at all. He's not campaigning. He's golfing. Do you have any thoughts about that? It seems like a kind of well worn over conversation. Oh, he's finally losing it. I'm done. I'm done waiting for the house of cards to fall. I keep hoping it's going to happen. I think last time we talked, he was about to have this press conference and he hadn't spoken. He hadn't been seen in like 5 days. And I thought, like, fuck it. Maybe he's just going to quit. Like, that would be amazing. Yeah. Of course, that's just silly. I mean, the thing is, Trump still loves doing the speeches. Trump loves running for president. It's being president he has no interest in. Yeah. Or at least the work part of it. He loves the ceremony of being president, but it's like the rallies. I mean, that's what he lives for. That's so funny that you said I just interviewed Aaron Rupar and he said the exact same thing almost. And it's like such a keen observation but he doesn't seem to be loving it right now because he's losing. As J.L. Covan said, he's glitching out because he's losing to a black woman. He cannot possibly understand how this is happening. Can't be real. Yeah. Yeah. It's like he has no idea. Like, it's completely an away game for him, this race. Yeah. Whereas before Biden dropped out, it was a home game. I think is really how it felt, is that it was all happening on his terrain and all the focus was on Biden and his, screw ups. And I think people really underestimated how much of the lack of enthusiasm on the Democratic side was just the fact that we were all dealing with the cognitive dissonance of knowing that this guy was too old, and it was uncomfortable, and it made us feel like liars when we would pretend otherwise. And you eliminate that if you take Biden's policy and add sort of vigor and a familiarity with the 21st century, that's a winning ticket. You know what I mean? I think that one of the most important observations, I don't know who wrote, Greg Sargent maybe writing about this, that we all know that things have gotten better by every measure. And certainly when it comes to economics and, the major piece of legislation and investments that Biden, Harris and Democrats made in America that Republicans then took credit for, even though they voted against it. We understand that, but the complaint for Democrats for Biden has been he's not getting any credit for it because people's perception, consumer confidence, and those kinds of questions are still that things aren't great. And certainly inflation is still too high and so on. But Greg Sargent, I think it was, who said this, basically like maybe because Kamala is a new face, people are so much happier. They're actually going to change their perception and recognize how much better things are simply just having her being correlated with it. Do you think that we are maybe in a place that could be the case where people finally realize, holy shit, the economy by almost every measure is so much better. Wow, I didn't realize how good things were going until she showed up. I think that is true. I also think that this stuff, there's a lagging indicator. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's like it doesn't turn into a meme immediately, like a cultural meme. I'm not talking about an online meme, but it's like the idea that we're in a good economy does not happen the minute the economy turns good. It takes months, especially because there's just so much money to be made in saying the economy is bad. I mean, I listen to Sirius XM all the time, and every third ad is something about like, economists are warning that the bottom's going to fall out, buy gold, like, and all this stuff. And there's always going to be those ads, but a lot of them were made during the pandemic when things really did seem a little like, where told me, I know you don't want me to tell people, but you bought a tremendous amount of gold. Oh my God, absolutely. It's awkward. I made it into a toilet so I could be more Trump-like. I have a gold toilet now. Yeah. It's not even hooked up. It's just, I use it as a chair. So you have all those ads, doom and gloom all the time. And
but it's like, these ads were all recorded at a time when things did look a lot scarier.
Yeah.
But there's no money. It's kind of like I was saying about the price controls thing, or it's that people's opinion of the economy sours on a dime. People's support of the economy takes a lot longer. And this is always where the Democrats get fucking screwed as well, is because it takes a long time to dig out from a bad situation like COVID. And whoever is the next president is going to have 18 months of momentum based on what Biden's policies have been over the past couple of years. Yeah. I mean, that we have escaped relatively unscathed compared to other countries. I mean, anything can happen, but my from watching the news, it's like, I feel like we're in a position where the economy is going to be pretty good for a while. And by the time the election happens, then, this is always what happens, that the Republicans crash everything and then the Democrats have to fucking clean it up.
Yep, that's for sure. That's absolutely been the record of our lives. Have you been paying attention to J.D. Vance at all this week? It's weird because every day he'll give a rally and he'll say something stupid or have a shitty moment. And also every day we'll find an old clip of him that's crazy pants.
Well, yeah, he's from this online, this Redditor, 4chan, this dark corner of the internet. And that's why the weird thing clicked so hard is that the conversations that these fucking dweebs have with each other, they're so divorced from any normal person's interactions. This idea of the point of a postmenopausal woman is to be a grandmother. That's the kind of shit that idiots on Twitter with Greek statue busts for avatars say. These idiots who describe themselves as, philosophers, these are not people that you would take seriously if you heard them. These are people who you would ignore at a party. These are weirdos. They're socially awkward. They're uncomfortable. They don't get along with people. People don't like them. And that has made them bitter and angry. I'm sorry. I'm going on.
No, I think that last point is really the hard truth, that a lot of these folks become who they are in media and politics as a result of scorn their whole lives, like a Ted Cruz or a Tucker Carlson, or, they're so mad. And then you have certain, kind of people who are liberal pundits. And I feel like, I don't even want to name names because it's such a deep psychoanalysis and I can only think of one. I'll just say it, like Matt Taibbi, what happened? I think he got mad and just changed. And you see it happen sometimes.
Well, it wasn't a coincidence that Matt Taibbi changed once all the shit about him, all the sleazy stuff with women he did in Russia. That's what
I mean. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Right.
But it was once he was kind of scorned by the left that all of a sudden he started leaning the other direction. Yeah. I have this theory, and I know it's silly to reduce global politics to high school. I know everybody kind of gets sick of talking about jocks and nerds. But it's hard when it tracks so cleanly onto our experience of life. And the fact is that nerds, I may have said this before. I
think I've heard this theory, but it is worth repeating because it's so, it really lands.
The fight has never been jocks versus nerds. The fight has always been jocks versus creative people. Or jocks versus art kids, either kids in the band or kids in the school play or the artsy fartsy kids. Whatever, the queers, whatever you called them in your school, to deride them, that's always been the fight. And nerds have always been the swing group. Nerds could go either way. Nerds could either ally with the sort of the kids in the school play, or they could ally with the jocks and try to, and I feel like in the Obama years, you had the Elon Musk types or whatever, that they were marginally on the left because they felt like they had a home there. And now they've kind of gone the other direction. I have not written a doctoral.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I was actually going to ask you, it's weird that you said that. I was going to say, now do Elon Musk, because of what he's become. This week, he, had Trump on, he's endorsed him, and he's, constantly a victim. And talking about other people being victims. It's another kind of...
honestly, that is what truly terrifies me. not Trump. It's not Musk. It's Musk and Thiel and all. It's the billionaires. Yeah. It's the spectrum billionaires. And I don't mean to insult people on the spectrum, but it's like we have to acknowledge that a lot of these people who are tech billionaires, they're not people whose skills are based in the world of cooperation or conversation or compromise. They're tech people. Yeah. You know, they see the world in code. They all think they're fucking Neo from the Matrix. And I really think that they see an opening where it's, we can be in charge. I mean, I'm sure, have you heard of this Freedom Cities thing?
I don't think so. Is that go ahead.
It's basically, anybody reading this should Google Freedom Cities. And it's part of the Trump Project 2025. And it's basically letting tech billionaires, and I'm watering this down, basically buy giant chunks of land and basically creating their own cities that have their own sets of rules that are not subject to federal regulations. Basically, it's like company towns. They want to recreate the idea of a company town that are basically owned and run like businesses. And I think the quote was from Peter Thiel. It's like where the people who live there are not citizens, they're customers. And they would not have necessarily voting rights. And I really feel like a lot of these tech billionaires, what they want to be is warlords. They want it to be like Somalia or whatever, where there's a nominal government.
They want to build their libertarian paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. They truly believe that they would do a better job. Now, maybe you agree, but I think that we have to understand that these people, they're not predisposed to democracy. They're high on their own supply. And when you're not the kind of person who relates to other human beings well, you don't understand that you need other people.
I love it. I fully endorse the idea of these libertarian freedom cities because I want all the people who want to live there to go live there and enjoy the water.
Oh, yeah. That was the other thing. Peter Thiel wanted to create those cities that existed in the middle of the ocean that were basically floating cities.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this was a Peter Thiel thing from like 10 years ago.
What about a hurricane or a storm? How can you have
I'm sure they probably considered that, but it's basically like shipping containers floating in the middle of the ocean, like kind of like a water world type situation. And yeah, if in my opinion, if Peter Thiel or Elon Musk, the weirdo from who's the guy who's always like, he thinks he's being chased by the government, and so he's like broadcasting from a boat somewhere.
John McAfee.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like if these dummies want to go out and build a city in the middle of the ocean and the world's Ayn Rand fans can go out there and live with them, I say have at it.
I want to live on the ocean city. I just want to know about the evacuation plan. I don't know why that's so hard.
I don't know if you saw the footage today of J.D. Vance with his dog.
No.
He has a dog, which people are joking about it because it looks like he's never held a leash in his life. He's like walking a dog up the stairs to the campaign plane, and it just looks very awkward. And of course, his dog is named Atlas, which I assume is an Atlas Shrugged reference. Do people understand that we cannot have an Ayn Rand person a heartbeat away from the presidency? Like we just can't. We can't have that. What do you think the chances are of Trump finishing 4 more years? I put it at 60%, and I feel like that's high.
Right.
I feel like people think because Trump talks all the time that he's in good health. I feel like he could drop dead anytime. I feel like there's a 50-50 chance that Biden will outlive him. I just think Biden is growing old in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's a point that we rarely talk about, meaning if Trump won, you would have a president, J.D. Vance, which would be a president, Peter Thiel, in many ways, in the White House, and we don't want him anywhere closer to power than he already has been. Yeah, I just watched that video of J.D. Vance with his dog. Yeah, what's wrong with it?
People were saying that like the fact that he doesn't know how to hold the leash properly, that it's like, is this just some dog that was kind of put into his hand or something? It's like this dog. Because it is a little weird to hold the leash in the middle of the leash like that. It's usually you hold it where the loop goes around your wrist. I mean, that's generally how a dog.
JD Vance's dog is to Tim Scott's wife.
Yeah. A dog beard.
All right, bud. I'll let you go. I love talking to you, man. Thank you very much for doing this with me today, as always.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, there you go. Christian Finnegan. See us along with J.L. Covan and more this Thursday at QED in Queens. Check out the show notes for more, or tell your friends in New York to come join us. That's all I've got for you. I will be back on Monday. I hope you enjoy the Lord's Day, or whatever you call it. Thank you very much for listening and for subscribing. I can't do it without you, my bumblebees. Bye-bye.
Stand up, let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand